Welcome to the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Join us each week as we sit down with the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management and author of Your Fiscal Physical, Ryan Nelson. Tune in to gain valuable insights and practical tips as we simplify complex financial concepts into digestible lessons. From budgeting to retirement planning, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering financial literacy.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Fiscal Physical Podcast. My name is Aaron Hoisington, and I am joined, as always, by the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management, Ryan Nelson. Ryan, how is the day treating you, my friend?
Very good. How about yourself?
I cannot complain. Anytime we get to do a podcast here, this is a good day in my book here. And definitely want to start by thanking our listeners for sure. We've gotten some great feedback from them, some questions that have been sent in as well. So keep them coming, guys. We really want to hear from you guys, hear what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear us talk about, because that's ultimately what this podcast is about, is increasing financial literacy and hearing from our listeners. And we want to make sure we achieve that as best as possible. But anything you want to say before we get started here, Ryan?
No, let's dive right in.
All right, let's do it. So as I mentioned, I love our listeners, and we actually have a question that was sent in here. So
excellent.
I'm excited to dive into this one here. We're going to go ahead, and the topic's going to be on health savings accounts. And we have a question from Sander. So we're going to go ahead and pause, let you guys digest this question from Sander, and then we will break it down on the other side.
Hello, my name is Sander, and I have a question for the Physical Podcast. So I was reading in the book on health savings account, and I was just wondering how you get like tax benefits on it. I don't have a health savings account, but I am thinking about getting one probably for next year. And I just wanted to know a little bit more on what health savings account it's all about. Love the podcast. You guys are doing awesome. And stay the course.
Thanks so much for the question there, Sander. And also appreciate you mentioning stay the course. Glad that's catching on.
I love it.
Yeah, hopefully you've gotten a tattoo of that, Sander. So, I feel like this is a excellent topic to cover, because an HSA, health savings account, is something that's plugged as a big benefit when you're, normally at a job. It's advertised, oh, we have an HSA option here. And I'm really curious to see, Ryan, what is an HSA? As Sander broke down, he kind of just gave us the broad overview of what it is and what it isn't. And so I'm going to let you kind of take it away to educate our listeners, and I'm ready to learn some stuff.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Sander. So HSAs, they're health savings accounts, and they are triple tax-advantaged, member-owned accounts that let you save pre-tax dollars for future medical expenses. So that's a mouthful.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's break that down, but let's say it one more time. So triple tax-advantaged, member-owned accounts that let you save pre-tax dollars for future qualified medical expenses. So again, that's a mouthful. So let's break kind of each component of that down. But so Sander alluded to it in the question. There are tax advantages of HSAs. That's the primary reason why you would sign up for an HSA, is the tax advantages themselves. So HSAs are what we call triple tax advantaged. And so they're the only investment account out there that has this triple tax advantage. So what that means is you get basically when you make pre-tax payroll deductions, so the money is not being taxed going into the account. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it's kind of like a traditional IRA.
Right.
You lower your taxable income by putting it in. So if you put $2,000 into your HSA account, you're not being taxed on those $2,000 when they go in.
Gotcha.
So that's a nice advantage. Then you get all the earnings; they get to grow tax-free over the time. So if you put $2,000 in an HSA account and you don't touch it for a year, 5 years, 20 years, you get all the growth that gets over that year, 5 years, 20 years, all tax-free. And then when you pull the funds out in the future, you get tax-free distributions if it is for qualified medical expenses. So you get the no taxes going in, no taxes while it grows, no taxes coming out. So pretty cool advantage. So that, again, triple tax advantaged. So if you kind of compare that to the 401k, a 401k, you don't get taxed going in, but you get taxed coming out. A Roth IRA, you get taxed going in, but not coming out. Mm-hmm. This is like the benefit of both worlds, kind of. You don't get taxed going in or while it's in, or when it comes out.
Yeah, that is awesome to be able to think about that, because like you said, like with the Roth, you get your Roth IRA, you get your earnings tax free as well too. But this like combines all three of those pieces that people are looking for. Once again, with the caveat of only being able to use it for qualified medical expenses.
And so we'll talk about what that is and even some other opportunities there. But so that's the tax advantages. So that's, again, why people use HSAs is for these tax advantages. And to your point, you can only use it for qualified medical expenses. But most people have some sort. We'll talk about what the medical qualified medical expenses are. But most people have medical expenses throughout the year.
Definitely.
Another cue here was, so they're member owned. What that means is if I set it up an HSA, I own the HSA. So when you set up a 401k, you own the 401k. If you leave your employer, you get to take your 401k with you. Those funds are yours, right? So if you've been putting into your HSA for 5 years and you have this lump sum of money, you hadn't been spending as much of it, you've been building it up, and you leave employers, you can take your HSA with you. So the HSA stays with you. It's member owned. And so what that means is it's yours to move if you leave your employer. Also, the balance rolls over year to year. So if I put, $2,000 in this year and I don't spend it all $2,000, whatever balance is left over moves to next year and moves to next year and moves to next year. So sort of like a 401k, if you weren't taking money out of your account, your 401k would grow over time. Your HSA could grow over time as well. Does that make sense?
It does. It definitely does. And that's a big piece that I think with the HSA is, it's not use it or lose it, because sometimes these different savings accounts, we're going to get into them in a future podcast episode, are, hey, you have until the end of the year to use this. But this one, an HSA, you can continue to roll it over, and there's no necessary, you don't have to spend it by the end of the year.
Yep, exactly right. Cool. Yep, exactly right. So again, tax advantaged, it's member owned. And then again, you can use pre-tax dollars for future qualified medical expenses. So qualified medical expenses, there's probably, I don't even know, probably thousands of different qualified medical expenses. This you'd want to connect with your CPA, see what they determine qualifies you. You can go directly to the IRS website as well. But you can see, I got just a quick list of a few different options here so people can start to get a feel for what might be qualified. So things like even acne medicine or braces or crutches. So things that are sort of being prescribed by a doctor, prescription eyeglasses, getting eye surgery, hearing aids, if you needed something like a motorized wheelchair, any prescription you get, if you had to get like x-rays or some sort of medical diagnostic test, allergy medicines, contact lenses, dental cleanings, doctor fees, eye exams, orthodontia. So you can get a pretty good feel. I mean, if it's a legit medical expense, it typically is going to qualify as a qualifying medical expense. But again, you'd want to consult with your CPA to see, kind of what the expense is and will it qualify for your HSA. But largely, if it's a legitimate health expense, it's going to get approved. I've heard stories of people using their HSA funds for things like massages and things like golfing. I would tell you, again, that's a decision you have to have with your CPA. I think those are sort of encroaching maybe in the gray areas, and you might, I don't know that there's, let's just say I don't know that I would use it for those resources myself.
Sure.
But so you can see it's kind of there are some gray areas here. If it's a medical expense, if you have to get a massage and, if your doctor determines, you need to get a massage, you need to get it every week, this is what's helping for you. Yeah, I suppose there's probably a way to justify that, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully it helps give you some idea of what some could, what some of these qualified expenses are.
Yeah, and I think that really helps, break it down, because the caveat that when we were like, it has to be for a qualified medical expense, but just looking at the list that we have here,
right?
I mean, I look right here, and I've done 6 of these this year,
Right, right.
already. And
Yeah.
I'm like the normal average Joe throughout their year or however long they're going to use it. I would almost be, as a gambling man, I'd be willing to bet you're going to do one of these things at least that you can use that for. And so if you're going to be paying out of pocket anyway, you have the option to do it through an HSA. You can get those other benefits as well, like that. That sounds like a pretty good deal in my mind.
Exactly. So even if you're in good health, to your point, some of these things are like preventative maintenance, right? Dental cleanings. Some of this stuff is preventative. So even if you're in perfect health, hopefully to keep yourself in good health, you're probably doing some of this preventative stuff, and it would qualify. Things like prescription eyeglasses and contacts. I mean, gosh, I don't know what percent of the population, but it feels like everybody has that stuff now.
I actually just picked up my contacts yesterday.
Yeah, it's not cheap either.
Oh, no, not at all. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, maybe we should have done this podcast yesterday before I picked that up. But that dives us into like who qualifies for an HSA. I think that was a piece of Sanders' question as well too about like, hey, like would I be a good fit? Like who actually qualifies for these, I suppose?
So so if you learn about the tax advantages, the fact that it's member owned, what could qualify, you may be saying, oh yeah, this is a perfect fit for me. I want an HSA. Well, not just anybody can go start an HSA. So you have to it's available to those with qualifying health plans, which is a high deductible health care plan. So not everybody has high deductible health care plans. So Sander, I don't know much or anything about his medical benefits, but he very likely has multiple different healthcare options, right? That he could sign up and select. If he picks one of his options that's not a high deductible healthcare plan, he will not be eligible for that HSA. So he would need, if he wants to take advantage of the HSA, he would need to select the high deductible healthcare plan option. And so really, you don't want to. You may be all jazzed up hearing about these HSAs and say, "Gosh, I really need an HSA. I really want one." That should only be one factor in how you're picking your medical plan, though, right? So you may, when you look at everything all in, you may determine, hey, at the end of the day, a high deductible healthcare plan just isn't the right plan for me and my family. Therefore, you would want to just be aware, okay, an HSA is not in the cards for me at this time. Maybe something changes. Maybe if you're just having a kid, you don't want a high deductible healthcare plan, but maybe later on in life, you're more comfortable having a high deductible healthcare plan, and you could start an HSA at that time. So again, just be aware, you have to have that high deductible healthcare plan to qualify to get the HSA.
Yep, that makes sense for sure. And you mentioned it's just one of the factors to be considering when you're thinking about it. I know I just derailing here. Just my wife has started a new job recently, and they sent her the packet to select her healthcare plan.
Yeah.
And holy cow, is that thing confusing? Yeah. Like you look at, there's so many different plans that you can go through. There's the EPO, the PPO, these different ones that all go through it. And so it's definitely good to sit down and see, like don't just narrow in, like if you're hearing this podcast, like, hey, I need to have an HSA with this too. Like you hit on it. There's so many different other factors that go in. If you're covering your husband or your partner and your kids or whatever, might not be the right choice at this time, but potentially down the road you could do something like that.
And so definitely an HSA is a variable. I think it's one of those things that a lot of people don't know about. So when they're picking their healthcare plans, they don't have all the information to make an informed decision. This helps give them a little bit of that information. So now they know what an HSA is. Okay. So here's a benefit of if I'd go with a high deductible healthcare plan, here's one of the benefits. Okay. Does this outweigh some of the cons? Hence, like one of the cons would be you have a higher deductible, And so you may say, that outweighs it. Or you may say, no, that doesn't outweigh it for me. I really, a high deductible healthcare plan is not right for us. Right. But a couple of other things to pay attention to. So even if you have a high deductible healthcare plan, you're not just like automatically eligible for HSAs. So if you have any healthcare coverage beyond that healthcare plan, so if you have something like Medicare, you would not be eligible for a HSA. If you're being claimed as a dependent on somebody else's tax return, so oftentimes if you're like maybe in college and you're being claimed on maybe your parents' tax return, even if you have a high deductible healthcare plan, you'd not be eligible to have an HSA. Or if you've received any VA benefits, so Veteran Affairs benefits in the last 3 months, you would not be eligible for the HSA.
Gotcha. No, that's good to kind of make sure that there are some things that you're like, hey, not everyone could just go out and just snag an HSA to do this here. You have to make sure that you qualify for these. Look at the regulations and restrictions for your specific ones for sure, and dive into it.
It makes sense. Like a lot of the stuff we talked about, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, right? Any of these types of accounts where the government's giving us some sort of tax advantage. Typically, there's some hoops we have to jump through. It's not just widely open to everybody. You have to have certain qualifications to qualify. There's certain contribution limits, right? There's different, again, hoops, for lack of a better term, you have to jump through to qualify to have these accounts.
And you hit on the limitation as far as that goes. What's the physical or the fiscal amount that you can actually monetarily amount that you can contribute to the HSA?
Yeah, so right now, so for the year 2024, an individual can contribute $4,150. And if you have family coverage, you can do double that, so $8,300. So a little over $4,000 for an individual, a little over $8,000 for a family. And then similar to IRAs, if you are over the age of 55, you can actually do an extra $1,000. So not too different from how kind of the legislation works for IRAs as well. But so for individuals, younger individuals, a little over $4,000. Younger families, a little over $8,000. People over 55, they could do an extra $1,000 on top of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I was like, there's got to be some sort of limitation on this, because just like the Roth IRA, when I first learned about a Roth, I was like, well, let me put all my money in that. And then it's like, actually, you're limited to a yearly contribution, because these are great benefits, but they're designed that way to be.
Right. Yep. But one of the cool things about this is if you do, again, to qualify, you'd have to have a high deductible healthcare plan, right? And typically, the higher the deductible is on your healthcare plan, the cheaper it is.
Right.
So in theory, these were just some of the cheaper plans to have. So if you took that difference, you could be investing it into this account every month. And then you'd be building up this nest egg. Again, it's not huge numbers. You're not talking about filing in, $100,000 a year or something. It's small. It's relatively small numbers. But then if you don't need so if you're one of those people who hasn't been to the doctor in 5 years, you say, well, I'm fine if I probably won't use a lot of these expenses. Then you could take the lower plan, put money in your own account, let it save up. And then, if you need a doctor once every 5 years, you have this lump sum of money that you could use to help pay for that deductible and stuff. So it's always a trade-off, right? Always pros and cons with these things.
There always is, for sure. And you hit on the one about the superpower, if you will, of the HSA is the ability to invest the money. Like that's one of the big pieces that you said with this specifically. I don't know if you can break down the difference, because it sounds a lot like kind of like a 401k, almost like there's elements that are similar to different retirement accounts, with it. But I'm guessing you probably wouldn't want to use this as a retirement account, though.
Yeah, it's really not a retirement account. I mean, it really is. I mean, it says even in the name, right? Health savings. So it's definitely not a retirement account, but there are elements that are similar. And so, like you said, I mean, the superpower of these things in my mind is the ability to invest them. So you could put money in. So for instance, I could put money in my HSA this year and invest it for the next 30 years. So if I put a couple grand in, let's say $4,000 in this year, I could invest it for the next 30 years. Maybe after 10 years, it turns to $8,000. After 20 years, it turns to $16,000. After 30 years, it turns to $32,000. So now I might have put $4,000 in, invest it like a normal investment account. And now as I'm entering retirement, I might have $30,000+ just from that one contribution. And so if you think about the way you're going to the way your healthcare expenses are spread throughout your life, it's disproportional. You have a lot more healthcare expenses at the end of life compared to at the beginning of life. And so this would be a way where you could say, as you're building like your retirement plan and stuff, and you say, okay, like I have enough money to live my life, I have everything, but what about these healthcare expenses? These are all going to start creeping up as I get closer to the end of life.
Sure.
Well, an HSA could be a great tool for you to use to start building a nest egg to cover those healthcare expenses, right? And so, again, while it's not a 401k, it has some similar elements. And even one element that's very similar is if you have an HSA. So some people are worried about, like, what if I overfund my HSA? What if I put all this money into my HSA for the next 20 years and never need it? That stinks, right?
Yeah.
Well, after age 65, you can use your HSA for any expense you want. It doesn't have to be a qualified healthcare expense. So after age 65, you could take money out of your HSA. Now you're going to lose one of the tax advantages. You're not going to get it to take it out completely tax-free. You're going to have to pay ordinary income taxes. That's exactly what you pay on your 401k. So so basically, it sort of after age 65, it kind of turns into a 401k. You get the a 401k, you get the tax advantage. You get a tax deduction when the money goes in. It grows tax free over time, and then you pay the taxes when it comes out. After age 65, you could use this account like that too. You already got the tax benefit when it went in. It already grew tax free over time, and then you just pay your normal taxes if you were to take it out for a non-qualified medical expense. So if you're worried about overfunding this thing after age 65, you really could use it very similar to a 401k where you take the money out. You already got 2 of the 3 tax advantages, and now it's basically being taxed similar to that of a 401k. So that's one similarity. Some of the things just to, one of the big differences though, you can only put $4,000 a year into.
Right.
Your 401k, you can put 20 plus thousand in, over 50, you can start to put, 30,000 plus you're getting company matches.
Exactly.
So you can just put a ton more money into a 401k. So I would never say an HSA is a great retirement planning tool. It can help supplement it.
Sure.
But it's not going to probably be enough to reach your retirement goals off of, right? Mm-hmm. But a couple of the differences between a 401k and an HSA, since you asked, a 401k, you do get some tax benefits when you put money in. Mm-hmm. You do your FICA, the contributions you put into your 401k are FICA taxed. Into a HSA, they're not even FICA taxed, so they're 100% tax deductible, which is just interesting. Both of them, you get tax-free earnings. Obviously, in the HSA, you would get, for qualified medical expenses, you'd be able to take the money out tax-free as well. And then one other difference is in a 401k, once you reach a certain age, there's what are called RMDs, right? Remember? And so required minimum distributions, you're forced to take some money out of your 401k at a certain age. In an HSA, you're never forced to take that money out. So it gives you a little bit of an advantage from a longevity planning standpoint. So, which makes sense because in your HSA, you might not need some of those qualifying medical expenses until you're in your 80s or 90s, right? So it's a different tool. It's used for something else. So it makes sense that some of these regulations would be a little different.
Absolutely, and I think we've covered this pretty well as far as this goes, and hopefully, Sandra, that helps give you some insight on whether or not it might be right for you. And once again, everybody's different with their situation and where they're at, and what their health plan might be specifically. Yep. So, but definitely, I learned a ton just from this podcast and reading these different elements of it. So definitely, maybe not have it be the deciding factor. Depends on your situation, though. But definitely have it be a factor if you're definitely looking at that for sure. An element, exactly. That's the best way to put it, without a doubt. But awesome. Well, sounds good, Ryan. Well, I appreciate the insight there, and we'll take a quick pause here, and we'll be back on the other side for some personal stuff.
And now, to put the personal in personal finance.
Welcome back to this side of the Fiscal Physical podcast. We are back here with Ryan Nelson, and we're going to get into some personal stuff here, Ryan. This is a pretty fun topic, I would say. I would consider you a traveler, somebody who likes to experience different cultures, different places, different experiences throughout your life here. And I know that you've been to quite a few in your life specifically. What is your favorite place that you've traveled throughout not in the United States, just in the world so far?
Yeah, it's always a fun one to talk about. I do like traveling. For me, I would tell you, I think what's more important to me than the place is like the people you're with and the activities you're doing. So for me, the actual physical location you're at is probably like tertiary to those two. If I'm throwing that word out.
Use that word right? I don't know. We'll find out.
I'm a financial advisor. To kind of give you an idea. So we were just chatting before we recorded the podcast. So last weekend, went camping and did a whitewater rafting trip, which was super fun. Super enjoy that, right? Camping in the middle of nowhere, no cell phone service, whitewater rafting, super fun. The exact polar opposite of that, I feel like, is like we went to Disney World in December. It's like super crowded, right? Yeah. It's like corporate America Central, and I had a blast, right? And so those are like two polar opposites, and I love them both. But so from a location standpoint, to get to like kind of the root of your question, like some of the tropical areas that I've been to that I love, Hawaii is super cool. Went to Bora Bora, that was a lot of fun. The Gulf Coast of Florida, like Destin, Panama City area, they have like just the most beautiful, picturesque white beaches you've ever seen. Like it's, the pictures you see and you think like, God, that must be somewhere I'll never be able to afford to go.
Sure, yeah.
In my life, it's like your computer background. That's the Gulf Coast of Florida. So beautiful area there. You and I went to Colombia together
a couple times.
Yeah, exactly. That maybe I'll let you share one of those stories, but that's some cool stuff there. Brazil, again, super cool. Camped in middle of the Amazon rainforest. That was fun. My time in Europe has been super cool. Went to Oktoberfest, which is one of my like top. Again, this is kind of going back to the people you're with and the experience, but like Oktoberfest was like one of the coolest things I've ever done. I thought that was a blast. And then a couple of places I want to go. So I want to hit Iceland and Greece and Egypt are probably my top 3 right now. But again, I guess it's probably getting through, but I like events and stuff like that more. So I would love to go to the World Cup. It's coming here, obviously. I'd love to see the Olympics. The Super Bowl in person would be fun. Want to see the Northern Lights. And then this is a little more location-y, but I also think like seeing the pyramids and like Machu Picchu and Easter Island and stuff. I think those would be fun things to see. Yeah. What about yourself? What's your favorite?
Yeah, no, those are all phenomenal answers as well too. And I really like that you said like, the pieces that we have here, we're recording this podcast in the United States, that we have in the United States, you don't have to go international to find some of those places that you see on your computer background or to experience things that you might not be able to experience here in Reno, Nevada. And I think back on the trips that I've taken, and it's mainly been the people I've been with and the experiences that I've done that I couldn't do here, I suppose. Like I couldn't do in my everyday life.
Sure.
And so it sounds, I went to Chicago last, like about a year ago with my wife and my sister and her husband, and had an absolute blast.
Right.
In the city. I've never been to Chicago. I've seen it on TV pretty much, but it is just a beautiful city. It sits right on Lake Michigan, cold as heck when we went, but apparently in the summer it's glorious. It has like beaches and stuff right there that you can walk to, and so that itself for me stands out as in the United States. That was one of the spots that I've really, really enjoyed that I'd really like to go back to as well. But you mentioned like internationally, like the Colombia trips have been phenomenal that we've gone to. We've done some things that I've never would do here in the United States. Got pretty sick one of the trips. That was fun as well as seeing the inside of a Colombian hospital. So that take that off the bucket list. But also Barbados.
I've been. You got engaged there too.
Oh yeah, I got engaged.
Things you'd never do here.
Things I'd never do here. Oh, golly, and I guess I did. That whole trip. I got engaged that trip, and then that same night I got really sick. So that was super fun. Been to Barbados in the Caribbean. Really different vibe of anywhere I've ever been as well, too. So there's a lot of different places that I'd also like to go to, but it depends on the people more than like, I just don't want to go myself. I'm not just going to go see Mount Rushmore by myself.
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm not going to do it. But if I went with my family or friends, like I think that's how you really have those memories that last a lifetime.
My theory on that is, so like even Tahoe, like beautiful, right? We're 25 minutes away from Tahoe, probably where we're sitting. Yep. And beautiful, one of the most beautiful places you'll ever see, right? What I think is interesting though, so we've been to Colombia. We went to Colombia with a group of 10 or something people. What I find is kind of interesting, if I try to put together a Tahoe trip on a weekend, it's hard to get the 10 people to go up there and like commit and do it. And so sometimes using these international like trips or these big destinations like can be this commitment tool and this thing that draws the people together to do this thing. And then again, what you really value is the time with the people. But how, it's going to be hard to get like a week-long vacation. If I just called a bunch of my friends up and said, hey, I'm going to go spend a week in, Southern California, who wants to come with me? Everybody would say, no, I'm too busy. I can't do it. They wouldn't prioritize it, right? If you say, hey, I'm going to a week in country ABC that sounds exotic, now all of a sudden people start reprioritizing. They say, yeah, I could make that happen. I could use my vacation time. But then again, I think the actual memories are from the people you're with and the like activities you're doing. But that's just my theory.
Yeah, no, I concur with that 100%. And so, but awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing and appreciate the episode as always. Appreciate our listeners. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Sander, who started this episode with his question. If you guys do have questions that you want to send in, definitely let us know. Email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com or just text it to myself or Ryan. We'll get it on here, and it's always fun to hear our voices on here that aren't ours sometimes too. It kind of mixes it up as well. But appreciate everybody, and I'll let you play us out here, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Sander. And like Sander said, as always, stay the course.
Thank you for joining us for the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Until next time, happy listening. And as always, stay the course. If you have a question or topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com. If you enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe to the podcast to ensure you never miss an episode. And consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite platform. This helps other listeners like you find the show. For more resources, you can visit Alchemy Wealth Management's website at www.alchemywealth.com or find your Fiscal Physical, the book, on Amazon. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that personal finance is just that, personal. Please don't take anything we say as advice. The preceding content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not an offer or a solicitation, nor should it be construed or relied upon for tax, legal, or investment advice. It doesn't consider your personal financial situation or objectives and may not be suitable for you.